Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Profotech team. I am Sanjay. We are learning CodeIgniter version 3 HMVC tutorial for beginners. This is our part 14. Inside this video session guys, we will see about built-in as well as custom helpers in modules. Now again, before starting this video guys, I strongly suggest you to watch about the built-in helpers in our CodeIgniter playlist. In those tutorials, basically we had discussed about all the built-in helpers in CodeIgniter like URL helper, captcha helper, file helper, smiley helper, and so many helpers we had discussed there. Now inside this video, we are not going to use any built-in helpers. We are just see about how can we create a custom helpers and use inside our modules, so that by making use of those functions we will understand that about the file structure of our modules. So let's recall about the old concept that how can we create any custom helpers in CodeIgniter. So if we open a new tab and let's say that if we want to create any custom helper, firstly the file should be created inside this helpers folder. If I back to CodeIgniter, scroll to top, now inside this application folder we have a helpers folder. So any custom helpers should be created inside helpers folder. So this is our first point that we have to keep in our mind. So here files should be created inside helpers folder. Now what about the second point? Second point is that any file should be created with suffix called underscore helper. It means that if you want to create any custom helper, so let's say that this is about the file name. So here let's say custom underscore helper. Now this is our helper name. While loading any helper inside application or modules, we will only use about the helper name, but this is the suffix actually we need to append with the naming convention .php. So while following these two lines, now let's say that we have followed and created our helper in our application. Now before use, we have to load this helper to application. So this load, let's say helper, and inside this we have to pass our helper name. So this is something called custom. Now let's say that we have multiple helpers in our application, something custom 1, custom 2, custom 3. So this is not the proper way to load all these helpers in our application. So for that we have to make an array, and inside this array we have to pass these value inside this. Now let's get started about in the modules structure. So back to CodeIgniter. Now we are making a sign up module as we have seen so far inside this playlist. Now inside this sign up module, I'm going to create one more folder, and that folder is something known as helpers. As we had discussed many times that all the folders basically application contains, we can create all these folders inside any of the module inside these modules. Now inside this helpers folder, let's create our first helper in module inside sign up module. So the first file I'm going to create, let's say custom underscore helper.php. Now what basically a helper is? A helper is the containing, or let's say a file which contains about the functions. Basically those functions we can use inside our application. These all functions are basically made to complete specific tasks. Okay, so inside this file is a PHP tag, and the first function I'm going to create which basically find about, let's say string length. Now inside this let's say if function exists, this is a PHP function. Now it basically checks that if any function define what we are passing here as the name here. So let's say if not exist, and here let's say find my length. Now here we are checking that this function already defined inside this file. If it will not define, then this function should be defined inside this block. So let's say function find my length, and inside this I'm going to pass a string value, so let's say string. And finally, by using strlen, this is a PHP function, we are returning the length of the string. So successfully we had created our first function inside this helper. Let's define one more function inside this file, which basically find about the level of student. Now inside this, let's say if function not exist, and this is find my label. Now inside this I'm to define, let's say function find my label. Inside this we are just passing about the score value. It means that this will be numeric integer value, and on the behalf of that, let's say that if the score value, let's say less than something 35, it means that we have to return the value. So let's say return something, let's say failed here. Else if, let's say score is, let's say greater than 35, and let's say score is less than equal to something, let's say 70. So inside this block, let's return average. Okay, now here it's something greater than equal to, again if else if, let's say score equal to something, let's say greater than, it should be only less than, so greater than equal to 70, and let's say score is something less than 90. So here we have to return as, let's say good. And finally, let's say else if inside this score is, let's say greater than equal to 90. So here we have to return something, let's say topper. Now on the behalf of the score value of student, we are returning about the label as in the form of a message. So back to our sign up module. Now inside this helper file, we had created two functions. Firstly, about finding the string length. Second, about finding the level of the student. So back to sign up module. So how can we load about this custom helper inside this module? So the same line we have to repeat what we had done inside our CodeIgniter playlist, something this load helper, and inside this we have to pass, let's say custom, only custom underscore helper is not we have to pass inside this loading section. So if I back here and at the footer position, let's make a function, let's say run underscore my helper. Now inside this simply I'm going to pass a string value, let's say string equal to, let's online web tutor, and inside this we are just equal, let's say string length of the string dot. Now we have a function for that, so find my length. So directly we can use, let's say find my length, and inside this we have actually passed the string value. All we have done now. In the previous video we had seen about our custom library. So while using any method from custom library, we have to write something the syntax, but inside helpers we don't have to pass anything instead of the function name only. So if I back to routes.php file and let's create a route, so let's route equal to sign up, and let's run hyphen, let's say helpers, and this will basically calls about the sign up module. So let's say sign up, and inside this we are using the function called, sorry, it's not the function, here we have a method called run my helpers. So copy and pasting it here. So if I copy this route name back to a browser, and if I make this route something here, now as we can see that length of the string is 16. Now successfully we have used our first function from a helper file. Let's use about the second function. So if I make comment of that, or let's say echo here, echo, let's say break tag. Now inside this, let's say that student, we have something called student, and its score value, let's say that we have 65, means 65 number we have, and this will be integer, and we are checking about the level of the student. So let's echo something label of the student, and to check the label we have a function for that. So find my label back here using that function, and inside this we have to pass the student score. Now if we save all these changes, back to browser, reload this page, now level of the student is about the average, because 65 and 65 lies inside this category here. Let's say that we have one more student, and that actually got about 96 number. So if we save all these changes, reload this page, now that student will be topper. So this is how can you use about the helper functions in our modules. Now let's say that if we want to use this custom helper to anywhere of the module, right now we have loaded this custom helper only inside this module, means inside this construct function. It means that we can access this helper only inside the sign up module. Now let's say that we have about 500 modules. So how can we access about this custom helper functions inside all modules? So simply we can define, or we can load this custom helper inside this my controller. So if we go at the top, and inside core folder we have a controller called my controller. This is the my controller actually we are accessing inside each of the module. Now if we click on that, now if I copy this or cut this code from here, save all these changes for this module, and let's say that I am loading this helper inside my controller. And as we know that my controller we are extending inside the sign up module, so output will remains the same value. Or here we have some error, and error is that actually we had created this my helper or this custom helper file inside this individual folder, means helpers folder only for the sign up module. So if we want to use this custom helper, so also we need to create this file inside this helpers folder, because this helpers folder basically accessible by each of the module, because here is the helpers folder is only for the sign up module. So if I cut this file from here and paste inside this helpers folder, now as we can see that, and this file no longer exists inside these helpers. Now if we reload these changes, now as we can see that it worked. So while making any respective helpers for any specific module, we need to define inside this helpers folder of each respective module. But in case where we want to make a global helper to use inside each module, so we have to define inside this helpers folder of this application. So successfully guys, inside this video we had seen about how can we create our custom helpers in modules. So inside this video session guys, if you went out, then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.